The Ultimate Fighting Championship was first established back in November 1993 and has since then given rise to some of the greatest mixed martial artists in the history of the sport. And since the championship has been known to bring with it a stream of opportunities, fighters are no longer forced to serve their time in the octagon while holding down a second job. But who are the contenders that are being paid the most by the UFC, and how much are they making at the end of the day? Well, whether you're a fan of the sport or you just want to know about who's the highest paid MMA fighter in the world, you've come to the right place, as we're about to explore some of the wealthiest MMA fighters in the history of the UFC. So strap yourselves in and get ready to feel some jealousy, as things are about to get interesting. But before we get into it, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, as well as hit that post notification bell so you're always kept up to date. Number 10, Junior Dos Santos. The fighter walking into the ring at our number 10 spot is none other than Junior Dos Santos Almeida, who was born in the state of Santa Catarina, Brazil on the 30th of January 1984, making him 37 years old at the moment. Known throughout his time on the UFC circuit as the Mustache, Junior didn't take long to make a name for himself, debuting back in 2008 against the one and only Fabricio Werdum. Since competing in the heavyweight division is tough but sparse, Junior had actually fought Werdum in a grand total of 21 times since that debut, with no less than 6 of those meetings bringing him a cash payment of 6 figures. It also needs to be said that Junior, who is ranked as number 10 on the circuit, has his highest paid UFC fight at UFC 211 when challenged by Stripe Maowick for his heavyweight championship title. Although this challenge was unsuccessful, he still brought home around $830,000 for the part that he played in the match. All in all, Junior was able to walk away with almost $6 million, making him one of the highest paid MMA fighters in the history of the UFC. Number 9, Donald Cerrone. Donald Anthony Cerrone, on the other hand, is an American mixed martial artist who was born in Denver, Colorado on the 29th of March 1983, making him 37 years old. Known professionally as the Cowboy, Cerrone has fought more than 50 bouts in the entirety of his career, of which he's won around 36. There is no doubt that he's been around the block a couple of times, with his veteran status allowing him to pick up some incredible cash prizes over the years and draw in huge crowds. It wasn't until recently that Cerrone found his way into our list, though, as he recently saw himself facing off against the face of the UFC, Conor McGregor. And although good old Donald found himself knocked out in the first 40 seconds of UFC 246, he earned more than $200,000 for just participating. Not bad for only 40 seconds of work, right? And while we do not advise anyone to get into the ring with Conor for money, this did allow Cerrone to walk away with around $16.6 million worth of earnings from just that fight alone. Was it worth it? You be the judge. Number 8, Mark Hunt. Mark Richard Hunt finds himself in the next position on our list and was, for internet's sake, born in South Auckland, New Zealand on the 23rd of March 1974, making him 46 years old right now. Although Hunt has always been a highly supportive contender within the UFC, his asking price just increased drastically after losing to Brock Lesnar at UFC 200. This loss was, however, overturned by the NSAC after Lesnar went ahead and tested positive for a banned substance. Since this controversial overturn, Mark has found himself on the lips of many people in the industry, which has resulted in the man being paid around 6 figures for the last 5 fights fought by his little date with Lesnar. The fact that he has only won once, which was against Derek Lewis, only adds to the luckiness of the break that Hunt caught. And unsurprisingly enough, this win was also considered to be his biggest payday yet, allowing him to bring in a total of $810,000 for the fight. This, coupled with his later deal with Reebok and Fight of the Night bonuses awarded by the UFC, solidifies him on our list. In fact, sources have reported over the years in the UFC, Hunt's been paid around $6.3 million, which really isn't all that bad considering the guy's win rate. Number 7, Jon Jones. Next on our list comes Jonathan Dwight Jones, who was born in Rochester, New York on the 9th of July 1987, but is known in professional circles as none other than Jon Jones. If you're a fan of UFC, then you have most definitely heard of the former light heavyweight and pound-for-pound champion. In fact, he's considered by many to be the greatest MMA fighter in the world, who is beaten only by his love for illegal substances and inability to keep himself out of trouble. Regardless of the terrible image Jones brings with him, though, he has headlined around 15 pay-per-view fights, most of which were title defenses. His biggest payday was his performance against Daniel Cormier at UFC 214, whom he beat to retain his light heavyweight title, taking home a grand total of $580,000 for the part that he played in knocking Cormier to the mat. Throughout the entirety of his career, Jones has been estimated to have about $7 million from fights alone, giving him one of the largest net pay worths in the game. Number 6, Georges St. Pierre. Narrowly beating John Jones for the 6th spot is Georges Pierre, who was born in St. Isidore, Canada on the 19th of May, 1981, making him only 39 years old. Although St. Pierre has mostly retired now and has been quite vocal about how little he's actually enjoyed fighting, there is no doubt that he was, by far, one of the greatest fighters to ever step foot in the octagon. Despite some humble beginnings, he actually ended his UFC career in style by drawing in a 7-figure payday for his hyped return match against Michael Brising. This allowed him to become the first fighter to return and become a multi-divisional champion for the UFC, reportedly bringing him a grand total of around $2.58 million for that fight alone. And although he does now prefer to act on the set of various MCU movies, his lucrative career with the UFC ended up earning him $7 million over the years. So he wasn't just one of the best, but was one of the highest paid. Number 5, Michael Bisping. Speaking of, Michael Bisping finds himself on the next position on our list, and was for the interest's sake born in Nicosia, Cyprus on the 28th of February 1979, making him 42 years old right now. We already heard about just how much St. Pierre made for facing off against Bisping that fateful day, but we cannot forget about Bisping himself, who reportedly earned around $540,000 for the part that he played in the bout. But even before this matchup, the Count had worked his way up to rank number 5 and was, throughout the course of his career, being paid more than a few pennies. In fact, his overall earnings from the UFC equal about $7.14 million. And although he is retired at the moment, Bisping has been given the opportunity to serve as an announcer and analyst for the sport, and is thus due to earn a lot more from the UFC in the days to come. Number 4, Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva, who was born in Sao Paulo, Brazil on the 14th of April 1975, is considered by many to be the greatest MMA fighter to ever walk the planet. The now 45-year-old Brazilian once achieved a 17-fight winning streak, which included 10 successful title defenses, which speaks bounds for his immaculate skills. His striking game was, simply put, light years away from the other guys that he was facing in the octagon. And when he was done with the middleweight division, he decided to move on to the light heavyweight class, knocking out incredible fighters like James Irvin, Forrest Griffin, and Stephan Bonnar. Despite losing 5 out of the 6 fights before finally retiring, Silva is still considered to be both a legend and icon of the UFC and MMA in general, so won't be surprised if you hear that he's been able to earn about $8 million from fighting alone. Funny enough, the middleweight GOAT started out at the UFC being only paid $66,000 per bout. Fast forward a couple years later, and he was bringing around $820,000, which is what he took away from his fight with Derek Brunson back in UFC 208. Suffice it to say, Silva does deserve every dollar that he's gotten, and is to this day still considered to be the most respected member of the UFC fraternity. Number 3, Khabib Nurmagomedov. Born in Russia on the 20th September 1988, Khabib Nurmagomedov finds himself in the next position on our list, with his current streak of 29-0 reaching a record-breaking terms of high consecutive wins. The retired yet still reigning lightweight champion of the UFC has been able to earn around $8.68 million from his time in the octagon. In fact, you won't even believe that the Lion earned from his biggest fight ever, which was against Dustin Poirier. According to reports, Khabib walked away with over $6 million from the bout, making it one of the highest earning matches in UFC history. Number 2, Alistair Overeem. Taking the penultimate position on our list is Alistair C's Overeem, who was born in Hounslow, England on 17th of May 1980, making him 40 years old at the time. He's probably best known for knocking out Brock Lesnar on debut, which already brought him in a 6-figure win. This incredibly successful heavyweight has reportedly even earned $800,000 for his last few fights, bringing in a total of around $9.57 million from his lucrative fighting career. Lastly, number 1, Conor McGregor. Last but certainly not least, and to the surprise of literally nobody in their right mind, is Conor McGregor, who is considered by many to be the face of the UFC. Born in Crumlin, Ireland on the 14th of July 1988, it did not take long for Conor to make a name for himself, earning over 7-figure sums for his last 5 fights. And while he might be the highest paid fighter in UFC history, what he gets paid for the promotion is nothing compared to what he brings in through sponsorships. A great example of this is against what he did versus Khabib, which banked him $3 million from the UFC. In total, however, McGregor ended up taking home a sum of around $50 million. Considering how the total amount paid to him by the UFC is an estimated amount of $15.8 million, this is definitely something to think about. But what do you think of these highly paid contenders? Feel free to let us know in the comment section down below. And until next time, guys, we'll see you later.